If you're over 60, listen carefully, because one of the biggest threats to your kidneys right now may not be sitting in a fast food bag or a soda can. It may be sitting in your produce drawer, disguised as something you trust completely. A steaming bowl of vegetable soup you made yourself. A green juice you drink because you read it cleanses the body. A side of roasted root vegetables you serve because they feel wholesome and homemade. A creamy vegetable dip you bring to family dinner because at least it isn't chips and queso. They all look innocent. They all look like the kind of choices a responsible adult makes. But if your kidneys are already working harder than they used to, if your potassium has crept upward, if you've ever passed a kidney stone, or if your doctor has quietly mentioned your creatinine or your filtration rate, some of these everyday vegetables may be quietly working against you instead of for you. And that is exactly what makes this dangerous. Your kidneys rarely shout when something is wrong. They whisper, through fatigue that doesn't lift, through ankles that swell by evening, through legs that feel unusually heavy, through a heartbeat that occasionally feels a little off. So before you sit down to another plate you assume is safe, simply because it's a vegetable, let's walk through 5 vegetables that may silently stress your kidneys after 60, and 4 gentler choices that can make your plate just as satisfying without asking so much of your body. And the very last, risky, one on this list may be the one you never once suspected. Vegetable 1, tomatoes. You'll find tomatoes everywhere: pasta, soup, sandwiches, salads, sauces. They feel like the backbone of eating clean. And to be fair, a few fresh slices on a salad are rarely a problem for most people. The trouble usually starts once tomatoes are concentrated, cooked down, reduced, canned, or turned into paste. Tomato sauce, tomato paste, canned tomato soup, ketchup, thick jarred pasta sauce. Once tomatoes are condensed into these forms, their potassium becomes condensed right along with them, and after 60, that detail matters more than most people realize. Your body genuinely needs potassium, your heart, your muscles, your nerves all depend on it, but it needs to stay within a narrow, well-managed range. Healthy kidneys handle the extra potassium without issue. But once kidney function slips, especially alongside high blood pressure, diabetes, or a rising creatinine number, that same potassium can start to build up in the blood, and when it climbs too high, it can throw off your heart's rhythm. Picture a man in his late 60s who's finally taking his health seriously. He's cut out soda. He skips fast food entirely. Every Sunday, he makes his own pasta sauce from scratch, tomato paste, canned tomatoes, olive oil, fresh herbs, and he feels genuinely proud of it. And he should. He's cooking at home, avoiding grease and processed junk. But months later, he starts feeling unusually tired. His heart occasionally feels like it skips. When his doctor runs blood work, his potassium comes back higher than expected, and he's stunned, because in his mind, he'd been doing everything right. That's the exact trap after 60. The danger isn't always the food that looks unhealthy. Sometimes it's the food that looks perfectly healthy, just used too often in a form that's far more concentrated than anyone realizes. None of this means you need to swear off tomatoes forever. It simply means paying attention to form and frequency. If your kidneys are being monitored, you may need smaller amounts of tomato sauce, less frequent servings of tomato paste, and more caution around canned soups and ketchup. Roasted red peppers, garlic, onion, fresh basil, and a squeeze of lemon can bring similar richness to a dish without leaning so heavily on tomato products. Vegetable 2, potatoes. Few foods feel more like home than a warm potato at dinner. They show up at holidays, at restaurants, at every family table across the country. And potatoes themselves aren't the enemy, but they can carry a substantial amount of potassium, and when your kidneys aren't filtering as strongly as they used to, that potassium becomes harder for the body to manage. Many people believe the only bad potato is a French fry, so they switch to baking instead and feel confident they've solved the problem. Baking is certainly better than deep frying in several ways, but for kidney health specifically, the concern was never really the oil. It's the potassium itself, and a baked potato, a sweet potato, mashed potatoes, or roasted potatoes can all carry a meaningful load, especially when more than one shows up on the same plate. Think of a woman at a family dinner who's been trying to eat better for months. She skips dessert. She waves off the fried appetizers. She doesn't touch the soda. But her own plate has mashed potatoes, a scoop of sweet potato casserole, and a few roasted potatoes on the side, all homemade, all looking perfectly normal. Later that night, she starts feeling unusually weak. Her muscles feel heavy. Her heartbeat turns irregular, and she becomes lightheaded enough that she ends up at the hospital, where the doctors find her potassium has risen sharply. This is what so many people never realize: homemade doesn't automatically mean kidney safe, and natural doesn't automatically mean safe in any amount. Comfort food can still overwhelm a body that has changed with age. If potatoes are something you genuinely love, the answer isn't necessarily to remove them completely. If your doctor or renal dietitian says they can still fit into your meals, one helpful method is peeling them, cutting them into small thin pieces, soaking them in water, discarding that water, and boiling them fresh, a process that can lower some of the potassium compared to a whole baked potato. Portion size matters just as much, and it's worth avoiding stacking mashed, roasted, and sweet potatoes all on the same plate if potassium is something you're watching. Vegetable 3, beets. Beets have built a reputation as a near-miracle food, good for circulation, good for blood pressure, good for detoxing the body. And for many healthy people, that reputation is well earned. But for adults over 60 with any kidney concerns, beets deserve real caution, and potassium isn't even the whole story here. Beets are also fairly high in oxalates, natural compounds that, in excess, can bind with calcium and form crystals, a genuine concern for anyone prone to calcium oxalate kidney stones, or anyone whose kidneys are already under strain. The real danger rarely comes from a forkful of roasted beets at dinner. It comes from concentrated forms: beet juice, beet powder, beet shots, and daily beet smoothies. Juicing lets you consume, in a single glass, far more beet than you would ever sit down and actually chew through in one sitting. A man in his late 60s sees beet juice praised online for heart health. He already has high blood pressure, and his creatinine has been slowly creeping upward, so he decides to do something that feels natural and proactive: a glass of beet juice every single morning. He feels good about it, even a little proud, believing he's detoxing his body. But weeks later, he's more tired than usual, his legs start cramping, and his lab numbers move in the wrong direction. What works beautifully for a young, healthy athlete with strong kidneys isn't automatically the right fit for a body with slower filtration decades later. If your doctor has approved beets for you, a smaller amount, cooked or roasted rather than juiced, is a far gentler approach. But if you have kidney disease, elevated potassium, rising creatinine, or a history of kidney stones, beet juice, beet powder, and beet shots aren't something to fold into a daily routine without professional guidance first. Vegetable 4, spinach. Spinach carries an almost untouchable reputation. It goes into salads, smoothies, omelets, soups, and wraps, and most people assume anything green must automatically be safe. For many healthy adults, spinach genuinely is nutritious. But for anyone with kidney concerns, elevated potassium, a history of kidney stones, or lab numbers their doctor is watching closely, spinach deserves a second look, because it's high in both potassium and oxalates, a combination that becomes especially relevant once it's used in large or concentrated amounts. A few leaves scattered on a plate is one thing. A tall green smoothie every single morning is something else entirely. It's common for people to toss in one big handful of spinach, then another, then add banana, almond milk, celery, and a green powder blend on top, and drink the whole thing quickly. Visually, it looks like pure health in a glass. But for weaker kidneys, that same glass may be delivering far more potassium and oxalate than the body is prepared to handle in one sitting. This is exactly why healthy should never quietly become unlimited, especially after 60. None of this means every leafy green should be feared. It simply means being more careful with daily spinach smoothies, and cautious about pairing spinach with other high-potassium foods on the same plate: potatoes, tomato sauce, beet juice, bananas, or certain milk alternatives. If you've had calcium oxalate stones in the past, it's worth asking your doctor or renal dietitian directly whether spinach should be limited in your case. Vegetable 5, mushrooms. This one tends to surprise people the most, because mushrooms rarely make anyone's watch list. They're used in soups, stir-fries, gravies, veggie burgers, and health blogs love recommending them for immune support. And a handful of sliced mushrooms sautéed into a dish is rarely a meaningful problem on its own. The issue tends to appear with concentrated forms: dried mushroom powder stirred into broths and gravies, mushroom coffee blends, and mushroom-based supplement powders taken daily for supposed immune or energy benefits. Drying and powdering mushrooms concentrates their natural potassium considerably, the same way juicing concentrates a vegetable's minerals far beyond what you'd eat if you sat down and chewed it whole. Picture a woman who starts adding a scoop of mushroom powder to her morning coffee every day after reading about its supposed benefits online. She isn't eating anything that looks unhealthy, no sugar, no fried food, nothing processed, and she genuinely believes she's supporting her immune system as she ages. But over the following months, she starts noticing more fatigue and occasional muscle weakness, and when her doctor runs blood work, her potassium has quietly risen. She never once suspected the little scoop she was adding to her coffee, because it didn't look or feel like risky food at all. This is the same pattern running through every food on this list. Concentrated forms of ordinary vegetables can carry far more mineral load than their fresh, whole counterparts, and after 60, that difference matters in a way it simply didn't at 30. Now let's talk about what you can lean on instead. After hearing all of that, you might be thinking there's nothing left to eat. I understand that reaction completely. Nobody wants every meal to feel like a minefield, and the goal here was never to make you afraid of vegetables. The goal is smarter swaps, ones that still leave you full, satisfied, and genuinely enjoying your food, without asking so much of your kidneys. The first swap is cauliflower. It isn't flashy or exciting, but for kidney-friendly eating, it may be one of the smartest vegetables you can keep stocked in your kitchen. It's naturally much lower in potassium than potatoes, and it's also low in sodium and phosphorus. Its biggest advantage is what it can replace: mashed potatoes. Steam it until tender, mash it smooth, and stir in a little olive oil, garlic, black pepper, and fresh parsley or lemon, and you get something creamy and comforting that doesn't hand your kidneys the same potassium load as a full plate of mashed potatoes. Cauliflower can also be roasted, steamed, added to soup, or lightly sautéed, and it absorbs flavor well without needing heavy sauce or extra salt. The second swap is red bell pepper. Most people treat it like garnish, tossing a few slices into a salad purely for color. But red bell peppers are relatively low in potassium compared to many heavier vegetables, and they bring natural sweetness, vitamin C, beta-carotene, and real antioxidant value. Their biggest strength is replacing thick tomato products. Many people who've cut out fast food still lean on tomato sauce, tomato paste, or ketchup nearly every day, believing they're eating clean, when those concentrated tomato forms may quietly be too much for weaker kidneys. Roasted red peppers can bring rich flavor and color without depending so heavily on tomato. Roast them until the edges soften, blend them into a sauce, slice them raw into salads, or sauté them with garlic and olive oil. The third swap is cabbage. It isn't glamorous or trendy, but it's naturally low in potassium, phosphorus, and sodium, and it can help make a plate feel genuinely full without the mineral burden that potatoes, tomato paste, or concentrated beet or mushroom products carry. It's also practical, sliced thin for a crunchy salad, cooked soft for dinner, added to soup, or lightly sautéed with garlic and a little olive oil. As a member of the same cruciferous family as cauliflower, it also brings plant compounds that may help support the body against oxidative stress, along with vitamin C and vitamin K. One note worth remembering: if you take a blood-thinning medication like warfarin, talk to your doctor about keeping vitamin K intake consistent day to day, rather than eating a large amount one day and none the next. The fourth swap is garlic. It's small, cheap, and probably already sitting in your kitchen, but its real advantage for people over 60 is that it builds strong flavor without needing salt. That matters more than it might seem. Too much sodium raises blood pressure, and sustained high blood pressure is one of the primary ways kidneys are gradually worn down over the years. Garlic can genuinely help you cut back on salt without your meals tasting flat or forgettable, which matters because bland food rarely stays part of anyone's routine for long. Crush or chop fresh garlic and let it sit for about 10 minutes before cooking to activate its natural compounds, then add it to soups, sautéed cabbage, mashed cauliflower, roasted pepper sauces, fish, chicken, or beans over moderate heat. Just avoid burning it, since scorched garlic turns bitter. None of this means vegetables themselves are the enemy. It means that after 60, your body may not process every food exactly the way it did decades ago. Fresh tomatoes are fine for most people, but tomato sauce, paste, and canned soup can add up quickly when eaten often. Potatoes feel comforting, but stacking mashed, roasted, and sweet potatoes on one plate can overwhelm kidneys that aren't filtering the way they used to. Beets are praised everywhere, but beet juice, powder, and shots concentrate far more than a body with reduced kidney function may be ready to handle. Spinach is nutritious, but daily green smoothies and salads can quietly deliver more potassium and oxalate than expected. And mushrooms seem harmless, but concentrated powders and mushroom coffee blends can carry a mineral load nobody thinks to question. On the other side, cauliflower can stand in for potatoes, red bell peppers can lighten the load of tomato-heavy dishes, cabbage can add volume and comfort without much mineral burden, and garlic can help you pull back on salt without losing flavor. This isn't about fear, it's about paying your kidneys the respect they've quietly earned after decades of filtering everything you've ever eaten or drunk, often without complaint. This video is meant for general education only, not as medical advice, and it isn't meant to frighten you, it's meant to help you think a little more carefully. If you have kidney disease, high blood pressure, diabetes, kidney stones, elevated potassium, or if your doctor has ever asked you to monitor your creatinine, filtration rate, potassium, phosphorus, or sodium, please talk with your doctor or a qualified renal dietitian before making any major changes to your diet. Everyone's situation is different. And what's fine for one person may need real caution for someone else. Getting older doesn't mean your body has stopped responding to better choices. You don't need to overhaul everything overnight, just start with one smarter swap today, and let that be the beginning.